Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The juggernaut Joyce has put on a dominant performance against Alexander Ustinov to advance to 9-0, stopping the Russian in the third round of their fight on the Billy Joe Saunders undercard at the Stevenage Football Ground. This was quite an interesting performance by Joyce because first fight under new trainer Adam Booth, first fight under new promoter Frank Warren on his new co-promotional deal, and we did see some things that we necessarily haven't seen from Joyce before, especially in that first round, but overall, very dominant performance. First round, he opens up, he's coming towards Ustinov. For that first minute, he was almost exclusively firing jabs to the body. And what was quite noticeable early on was the movement from Joyce, very mobile, and also there was some head movement. And Joyce has often been criticized for his lack of head movement, and he is easy to hit. And clearly he's been working with Booth on some of these things, and he spoke after the fight that, yeah, he has been trying out a few new things. He's been working with Booth, trying to improve his defense, and we did see signs of that in the first round, that he has obviously been trying to do a few different things. But against an opponent like Ustinov, well, he had the opportunity to do so. Ustinov, right from the get-go, looked a little at sea, and Joyce effectively was doing what he wanted to do in that first round. And there was a very nice right hand in that round. But apart from that, it was a good feeling-out round. Joyce was able to show his wares, show what he's been doing with Booth in the lead-up to this fight and his preparations. But round two, it was a bit of a different story. Joyce comes out very aggressive from the outset, almost charging at Ustinov, throwing heavy hands, backing Ustinov up. In that first 30 seconds or so, he was really pressuring Ustinov, who wanted to tie up. He didn't like it, but Joyce, he was able to break free of those clinches and let his hands go for the most part. And Ustinov really was a walking heavy bag. Wasn't throwing too much, wasn't able to do too much to Joyce. There was the odd shot coming back, a jab or a right hand, but it just, it was walking heavy bag material. And it appeared at this point that it was only going to be a matter of time, especially after Joyce landed some telling shots near the bell, a right hand and a left hook. And of course, round three, this is where the fight ended. Ustinov, he landed a right hook after Joyce opened up with a couple of nice body shots, but it was all downhill from there. Joyce backing him up with some heavy shots and then landing a very devastating and vicious left hook, dropping Ustinov. And on unsteady legs, he gets up. He seemingly beats the count. He's up at about 9, but the ref is already waving it off. So it did feel maybe a little bit premature, but this was only going one way. Ustinov, he looked a bit groggy. He looked a little bit perturbed that it had been called off, but at the end of the day, it would have been over within a matter of seconds anyway. Well, that's my take on it. But Joyce, overall, it was an impressive performance. There are some things that he still has to work on. One of the things I noted immediately on Twitter from people who were responding to tweets and also tweeting about the fight was people thought they were watching the fight at half speed. So Adam Booth, who really does, look to have his fighters being explosive, I'm sure if he gets to work with Joyce for any length of time, and bear in mind this is Joyce's third trainer in 18 months, he may be able to quicken Joyce up there. But there were signs of some defense, there were signs of some head movement early on from Joyce. He did show that in that first round, but he reverted to type a little bit from round two onward, coming forward, the juggernaut style, just walking him down and beating the other guy up. And that's kind of his wheelhouse to some extent. He really just beat the guy up, and it's not necessarily one punch that does the damage. He breaks you down through a range of shots over the rounds, heavy hands, and even those shots that aren't landing flush or hitting on the shoulder or the arms, they're taking a lot out of his opponent. And Ustinov, relatively durable guy, but unable to take the weight of the punches in the end. And Ustinov was stopped recently, or about 6 months ago, I should say, by Michael Hunter, and that was in 9 rounds, and Hunter was able to do what he wanted to do at any point in that fight before eventually dropping him and stopping him. So Joyce able to do it much quicker, although, I think many would point out that Joyce is a much heavier-handed fighter than Michael Hunter. So in the scheme of things, even though Ustinov is a very faded fighter at 42, this is his third loss on the trot, he's looked dreadful in all his fights. There's a little bit of name recognition having him on Joyce's record, and for this point of his career, it's not a bad opponent. It's this whole sort of sales pitch that they keep doing about rushing and, accelerating his career. It's not really happening at the moment. He's kind of in a traditional mode of a prospect coming up, because you look at some of the recent opponents, the faded former top contenders or a former champion in Berman Stavern, and, this isn't rushing him at this point. So we'll have to see what they do with him, and he needs to get a bit of a wriggle on because he's 33 years old now. But in terms of having this fight so soon after signing on with Frank Warren and his new trainer with Adam Booth, there was some encouraging signs here. And he is back in the ring in July on that July 13th, Daniel Dubois and Nathan Gorman card. No opponent yet, but hopefully it's not going to be someone below the Ustinov level. Although, we're getting to the point where Joyce has had these sort of learning fights. And if he is really going to be getting to world level as he says he wants to, they're going to have to start stepping up the opposition, wheeling out these faded beyond belief fighters who are really there to take a beating. It's only going to do so much for his development. Eventually, they're going to need to put him in with someone that can test him a bit. I mean, these guys like Ustinov and Stavern, they're effectively walking heavy bags. They're tailor-made for Joe Joyce, who with his style is always going to beat these guys up. But it'll be interesting to see him in with someone who can move a bit, who can maybe actually put him under some pressure, try to pick him apart, and it'd be good to see his response to that, because at the moment, the opponents he's facing, they're not going to give him that. And probably because where he's at in his career, it's careful matchmaking. Even though they're talking up how fast he's been accelerating, he's on a pretty traditional prospect route at this point. But overall, we knew what this was heading into this fight. He was always going to beat up Alexander Ustinov and stop him. And he did that, and he did his job relatively well. We saw a few things, and after the fight he said he'd been working on a few things, his defense. He felt good out there from trying what he'd been working on with Booth, and overall he was pretty happy with the performance. Be interesting to see who they match him with for July 13th, but hopefully it's not another stiff like Ustinov clearly was. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.